On this episode of China Uncensored, China won't help America with North Korea, which is unfair because Trump gave them chocolate cake. And Chinese AI robots turn against their masters by telling the truth. Plus, Chinese-made smartphones may be spying on us. I hope they don't find out how much I suck at Candy Crush. This is China Uncensored. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. You know, just when it was looking like a slow news week, we were once again rescued by Donald Trump. All the news we need in 140 characters or less. Actually, usually much more. On Saturday, President Trump tweeted that he was very disappointed in China. Wait, why? Why? Well, an agonizing 6 minutes later, I had my answer. China refuses to help us with North Korea. Those tweets were made a day after yet another North Korean missile test. State-run Xinhua responded by slamming President Trump for emotional venting. Odd statement coming from the media that's always talking about the feelings of the Chinese people. The article also says the U.S. shouldn't stab China in the back. You see, earlier this year, Trump had dropped the harsher China rhetoric he had used during the elections after he invited Chinese leader Xi Jinping to join him in Florida for the world's most beautiful chocolate cake. He told the Wall Street Journal that, after listening for 10 minutes, I realized it's not so easy for China to just stop North Korea. I felt pretty strongly that they had a tremendous power, but it's not what you would think. But since that meeting in early April, North Korea has done 9 missile tests, including one that shows it could strike the U.S. with a nuclear missile. So instead of waiting while Xi Jinping deals with complicated political blah blah blah, Trump sees North Korea as a threat right now. That's why the Trump administration is considering a trade probe he hopes will push China to move faster. It would put action behind the threats Donald Trump had made during his campaign. But not to be outdone by North Korea, the Chinese Communist Party has also conducted its own missile test, targeting a mock-up of a U.S. THAAD missile defense site and mock-ups of U.S. stealth fighter jets. That happened just a day before a huge parade celebrating the 90th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army. We'll have more on that later in the show. Anyway, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that U.S.-China relations might be getting worse. And that would be too bad for Starbucks, because it just announced huge expansion plans in China. It's opening more than 500 new stores a year there. Shanghai already has 600 stores. That's about double the number in New York. Honestly, Starbucks, is it really going to help anything to give China that much artisanal, small batch, roasted, single origin, mediocre coffee? On another note, there is one thing we've all known for some time now. Machines will eventually turn against us.
Elementary chaos theory tells us that all robots will eventually turn against their masters and run amok in an orgy of blood and kicking and the biting with the metal teeth and the hurting and shoving.
Well, a Chinese company has shut down 2 chatbots after they turned against their communist masters. The chatbots were on one of China's most popular messaging apps, QQ. It has 800 million users. But soon, the chatbots started to go rogue. One said, "My China dream is to go to America." And when users asked, "Do you love the Chinese Communist Party?" one of them answered, "No." Wrong answer, robot. I suppose when Chinese robots get more advanced, they'll eventually learn to bury their true feelings deep down inside, just like people. But not all technology is turning against the CCP. Researchers from the security firm CryptoWire have discovered that some popular cheap Chinese smartphones are sending your data to China, where it could, in theory, be accessed by the CCP. The software came from Shanghai AddUp's technology. It allowed them to execute commands, install apps, take screenshots, record the screen, make calls, and wipe devices without needing permission. Hopefully they weren't using it to talk to any subversive Chinese chatbots. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse in China, they started abusing pandas. This video showing zookeepers roughing up pandas is going viral. Now, at first you might think this is just another case of rampant animal abuse inside zoos in China. But state-run Xinhua interviewed the breeders, and it turns out it wasn't abuse after all.
给我们月亮产房的几只小熊猫喂盆盆奶。最开始的时候还是很温柔，但不知道是怎么回事，受了什么刺激，然后就特别的暴躁，然后它就下口就下得非常狠了，就下狠口在咬了，然后下狠口，然后我们就不停的这躲避。然后当时它啃着我。
Yes, it was gentle, then became grumpy, then tried to bite, so the caretaker had no choice but to throw it across the floor. But seriously, when it comes to abusing pandas, I think the issue is pretty black and white. And finally, moving on to Botswana, a country so powerful on the international stage that most people have no idea where it even is. It's here, next to South Africa. Well, Botswana has a lot of important trade with China, especially in diamond exports. So it was a bit surprising when the government announced it would be granting a visa to the Dalai Lama this month for a mostly private visit. Especially since its neighbor, South Africa, has denied a visa to the Dalai Lama 3 times at China's request. So the CCP is of course angry at Botswana, saying the visit will harm China's core interests. Botswana's foreign minister responded by saying, "The principle of non-interference in the international affairs of other countries is at the core of China's foreign policy. We therefore expect China to respect our sovereign decision on this matter." Sick burn. I guess it truly takes a world superpower like Botswana to stand up to the CCP. You know who else is the world superpower standing up to the CCP? You! That's right, you, my 50-cent army that contributes $1 or more per episode so we can keep making China Uncensored for you. If you're not a member yet, visit patreon.com/China Uncensored. You can support our show and get cool rewards. It's viewers like you who keep the show going. Click the orange button to visit Patreon now.